morning. Good morning. It's great to be here. Let me start with a little story and tell you why it's so good to be here rather than, coming out of Seattle rain and coming here to find rain. As some of you may know, on top of being Senior Director for Open Source Communities at Microsoft, I am also a member of the Apache Software Foundation, and a proud one. And this year, it's my 20th anniversary in open source, which means that I have been proudly putting food on my plate for 20 years with open source. It has been a sizable amount of food, as you can see. That proves that open source can work. My gig at Microsoft is a culmination of all that. But I have been at Apache for quite a while, and I am very proud to say that I was there when Lucene was first brought to Apache. And I remember the excitement. I mean, it was already a cool thing, and I saw it taking the world by storm, getting to the ultimate stage, which is the ultimate commodity. You need to do search in Java. Well, of course, Lucene. That's taken for granted. And I remember the excitement when I saw Solr coming up. That was the next level. The idea that you can actually go beyond Java. We were seeing the work going towards services, towards a mix of small pieces working together, and Solr was a great fit. So it has been great to follow that journey, and it has been great when I learned, and I joined Microsoft a year and a half ago, so I'm still pretty new at that company. But when I learned that we would have been working with the likes of Solr, oh yeah, that was a great day at work. So in the next 30 minutes or so, I don't want to take a lot of your time. I want to tell you a little bit about our journey towards openness and what's going on, and why we can actually, yes, put Microsoft and open source in the same sentence, and it actually works. So let me start with the boldest statement of all. We have changed. And we have changed it as a company. It's not just that open source is a piece of Microsoft, which is this number of big guys. We have changed throughout the company. And I can tell you that in this year and a half that I have been there, I had so many meetings with so many people across the company, everywhere. And I want to tell you not only the what, so what's going on with open source at Microsoft, I want to delve deep into the how we are doing that, and also the why. But I also want to argue that, well, having been in this business for 20 years, I have seen some changes in the very notion of openness. Back then, yes, we started with open source code, the bits, very important, crucial, actually. But we pretty quickly understood that, yeah, that wasn't quite enough, that openness as a concept is actually bigger than that. And then we started to talk about standards, the importance of having open standards that accrue to open source, and how the two can actually work together. Fast forward a few more years, and we understood the importance of the ecosystem, the community, open development. Paul just said how you can safely use Lucene and Solr today, regardless of the commercial players that are behind it, because there is a powerful community, and the project will outlive whatever issues there may be on the business side. That's important. So it became, three components: the source code, the standards, and the community behind it. Unsurprisingly, now we are talking about cloud. And the openness concept is getting even bigger. Because in the cloud, well, source code is okay, but it's not the whole picture. We are now talking about open APIs. This is the way we interact with cloud, right? And so concepts such as how do we do that? How do we keep the cloud as an open and interoperable platform are very, very important. And this is where we are at the forefront. So we have changed. We have become more open. At the same time, the world has changed, has become more open, and the notion is much wider. And so I encourage you to think that, yes, of course, open source, it's extremely important. We are there in so many ways. but it's also a concept wider than that. And the way we think about it, the way we think about our journey, the way we think about how we changed, is based on these three pillars. Understanding that it's not just us, playing well with others. Listening to those who are actually helping us paying our bills. Those are important, the customers, the developer community. And understanding the paradigm shift of the cloud and what it changes to all of us. I want to double click on each of those and telling you what exactly it means. So let's start with the first, the playing well with others. And again, how it maps to the new concepts of openness today. Standards, open source, multi-platform, mixed IT, etc., etc. Let's start with standards, because standards are important today. We do a lot of work there. We work with 150 plus standard organizations. They are divided in working groups. Every working group takes care of a family of standard over a specific standard. It's more than 400. It's more than 1,000 people in Microsoft on our payroll that have, on a daily basis, all they do is working with standards. And those standards are all over the place. It's the USB port on your laptop, it's the GSM radio on your phone, but it's also HTML5. It's the upcoming standards in the cloud. And this is where we have a leadership position, and this is just a small representation of all the standards bodies we are working with and how we are working. I take one example that is closer to me, because as it happens, in my group, one of my peers is the co-chair of the HTML5 working group. And that allowed me to understand how standards bodies have changed over the years. They have become more open to. You don't need to take my word for it. A lot of them have actually mailing lists, much like open source projects. They're archived. You can go and see all the discussions that happen in the W3C, and you can see for yourself how Microsoft is involved over there. We'll talk about it in a bit, but it's good to see that there are proof points. Because, see, the beauty of open source is that at the end of the day, code talks, code matters. It's not about the words, it's about the code that you produce. It's about the interactions you have with the community. And there are proof points. And there are proof points on the standards part as well. So I encourage you to take a look at it and see what it means. Now, when you talk about Microsoft, of course, we have to start with Windows and what Windows means to us. To us, the real importance of Windows is the developer ecosystem. It is still the biggest, unsurpassed, unrivaled in the world when it comes to the single platform. When you think about those numbers, more than 500 million copies of Windows 7 that have been sold, how is that possible? Well, the only way we can make it happen is by making sure that that number in the upper left, the 4 million applications, keeps on growing. I don't think we stand a chance if we want to sell Windows because of Minesweeper. We need to go beyond that. And to do that, we cannot do it alone. And historically, we haven't done it by ourselves. We always, always, always relied on the community, on our partners, on our users. Those are the guys who are building on top of our platform, making it richer, making it better. And this is why, again, it's no news for us, the idea of working with others. We did it all the time. If you go to MSDN, you see that it's one of the biggest websites out there, and it's chock full of information and interaction. And it is really, really crucial to us to keep that relationship open and keep that relationship working at full steam. And when we think of Windows 7, well, we pivoted on standards, on a lot of those, all over the place. And this bet paid off. We were able to get 800,000 applications designed and developed explicitly for Windows 7. More than 250 different standards, peripherals, devices, et cetera, well, you know how it works, you know how hard it is. And this is why we need to rely on that kind of standardization. And we are actually upping the ante with Windows 8. We call it Windows Reimagined. A new interface, yes, of course. We want to get into the touch world, we want to get into the devices world, so we are very excited about what we call Metro. But what is even more interesting is what's behind the scenes. The fact that all those widgets can be realized using HTML5, using JavaScript, using standard W3C technologies. So that's, again, a powerful and bold step for us. It's the idea that, yes, we want our platforms to be as open, as inclusive, as close to the technologies the developers love and use. So this idea of devices becoming more and more a screen to the cloud makes it natural to think that, yes, HTML, CSS, JavaScript have evolved to a point where it just makes sense to have them as first-class citizens on your desktop. And it's exciting to see the uptake of the developer preview and now the consumer preview. We are really, really excited about this beautiful thing we call Windows 8. And I hope you will be as well. And then, of course, we have our online services. Windows Live, well, that for us, it's a very interesting playground to play with all those emerging standards. The bleeding edge of W3C, the new federated authentication out there, it's all there. Windows Live Messenger, we want it to be a hub that talks to every popular service out there. And guess what? We can make it happen because all of us have been working toward a world that is inclusive and open. And we want to be able to make sure that whatever service we do, if it is HTML-based, yes, it needs to work on all browsers. And that's very important for us. And when it comes to browsers, IE9, the browser you used to hate, right? Well, IE9, it's a very interesting story for me because it is, again, a strong statement on what is our position when it comes to a fast-evolving world such as the web standards world. You see, in the past, and I wasn't there, but I understand that Microsoft was actually pushing a lot of standards into their browsers. The result was this thing called IE6, right? A browser that included everything in the kitchen sink, half-baked stuff, right? And when you include half-baked stuff, you do it your own way. You don't do it in a standard way. And you end up with something that is unable to withstand the test of time. This is the big mistake that we did with IE6. We recognized that. And when it came to IE9, we saw that HTML5 was becoming this wide collection of standards everyone was excited about. Everyone was talking about WebSockets, yay, IndexedDB, yay, let's put it in the browser. Let's build application based on that. Guess what? They were half-baked. And there were horror stories of implementations that had to be taken back or completely disabled into browsers. And we say, no, wait a minute. We want to learn from history. We have been there before. We did the big mistake with IE6. We are not going to repeat it. We want to make a promise to developers. IE9 is about same markup. You use some markup today, it will work tomorrow. We are making a narrower selection. We are working actively with the standards body to advance those standards to a point where they can be safely implemented. But at the same time, the browser that we are shipping to the enterprises, to my mother, needs to be something that is stable and can work today. And so we came up with IE9, and now we're coming up with IE10, which is even smoother. It's taking more and more standards. It's taking more and more exciting stuff, and it's built around the concept that we want more web, less Chrome. So full screen experience, seamless navigation, et cetera, and powerful integration with our tools. So here we have Combat Inspector, which will be able to scan your HTML code and telling you, hey, this kind of stuff doesn't really work anymore in HTML5, you should change it. And it's just one of the many goodies that are coming with IE10. If you want to have a sneak preview of IE10, just download the consumer preview of Windows 8. That's the browser that comes with it, both in the Metro full screen interface and the desktop one. And it's a great step forward. And then, of course, we have the devices, starting with the phone. And this is where we did some significant investment in open source. Last week, we announced support for jQuery Mobile. What does it mean? It means that we went to the jQuery Mobile community and we said, hey, this is a cool project. We see that developers are using it. What about we work together to produce CSSs and assets and so on, so that you can just drop it in and boom, it works. Your mobile app that has been designed with jQuery Mobile will look and feel like a Windows Phone app when used on a Windows Phone. At the same time, and then again, this is something that makes me even prouder because it's an Apache project. We are working with PhoneGap, which in Apache is now known as Apache Cordova, which is, if you have never heard of it, it's a way to build your phone native applications with HTML, JavaScript, CSS, and have them delivered as pure native apps. And again, we have been sponsoring the Windows Phone port, and it's on one of the many interactions that we have with the open source board. We will see a lot more as we move on. Office. Yes, even Office, it's about standards. And not just about OpenXML. Our support of ODF is strong. Actually, on Windows 7, you can use ODF on WordPad. You don't even have to use Office, per se. And we are really serious about interoperability when it comes to Office. We are really serious about documentation and open APIs, because we have Office 365, which is our cloud-based offering, and we want developers to be able to build the next generation application, especially when it comes to reporting. So we are seeing this trend. Big data, they churn and they process the vast, enormous amount of data. They put it into something more manageable, and ultimately it has to show up in some reporting app. And that's what Office 365, among others, is about. And then we have all the devices where we want this thing to work. And we want Office to be the best productivity platform ever, be it on Windows or on any other device. And then we have the server. We just came out with Windows Server Beta, Windows Server 8 Beta, and the pickup from the analyst and press has been nothing short of awesome, because they saw how supporting standard has been crucial, and how Windows 8 is actually unique in the way it allows you to go from on-premises to the cloud in a seamless fashion. And when we see quotes like this coming from the register, well, we know we've done a good work, such as, we know that we did a good work with IE when we have Mozilla evangelists going on record saying, hey, Microsoft is the only company that gets web standards. Fabulous. I couldn't ask for more. So Windows Server 8 is going to be a powerful platform again, and you should see how it makes the transition and the connection between on-premises and cloud even more seamless, even more effective, and in an open way. Windows Server 8 is the one where you can run the development platform of your choice. PHP, Python, Ruby, Java, Node, .NET, of course, you name it. They're all there, and it's a great platform to see. And then we have our many engagement with open source. I'm going to drill down in those in a short while. This is just a small selection. Actually, one of the first things I did when I joined Microsoft was counting the number of projects we are involved with, I stopped around 450, because it really made no sense. It became too difficult to track. But I can safely say that there are at least 450 different initiatives as of 15 months ago that we are involved with. And that's a fair amount to start with. And it is important for us. Remember my slide on the ecosystem? On those 4 million applications? Well, 350,000, it's roughly 10% of them, but they are open source. It's important for us. And it's important for us that the vast majority of the top open source apps do run on Windows. It's important for us that we are working with the communities, being it in other foundation or in our very own Codeplex repository, where we have roughly 30,000 projects. We have more than 300,000 users. Granted, it's a lot of .NET, but it's great and very vibrant. And to us, it is about being where developers are and making sure that we can meet their expectations. And again, when you think about 350,000 projects that run on Windows, we are helping a lot of them, and we have a strong business reason to make it happen. Again, our very own survival depends on the health of the platform, and we want as many applications as possible to run on our platform, so that should be no surprise. The most recent announcement, 1 month ago, we announced that we open sourced a bunch of stuff in ASP.NET, but not only that, we want to work with the community. We are welcoming contributions and patches, so you can go out there, check it out. The source code is on Codeplex, fire your Git client, and pull requests away. We are waiting for your contributions. And that, again, adds to the good vibes and to a lesser amount of head scratching. What has Microsoft to do with open source? What's the deal here? And to us, it's really about going to a point where we embrace open development on our technologies, and we allow third parties to contribute. That's our ultimate goal. And it's happening more and more. And then customers are important, of course. Microsoft is laser focused on customers, and customers are sending us a message that it's loud and clear. They're telling us, guys, we like your platform. We respect your platform. We want to keep investing on your platform. At the same time, we live in a world where we have other investments in other platforms, and we need them to work together. And we need them to work with you. And we fully realize we cannot and won't not and will not be an island. We want to be connected. We want to make it easier for our customers to work with non-Microsoft technologies and make sure that they work with Microsoft technologies. And this is the guiding principles, one of the foremost guiding principles of what we do. The idea that we are enabling customers implement the scenarios they're asking of us. And that scenario is managing mixed IT environment. So let's start with Linux. You may have heard that we actually made into the contributor list to Linux. So Microsoft is contributing to the Linux kernel. We are somewhere in the top 20. I don't count lines of code and contribution. What matters to me and makes me proud is that, yes, we are there. Our contributions have been recognized. And this is great. Why are we doing that? To us, it's all about enabling Linux to run on our virtualization platform, on Hyper-V. So to all those customers that are telling us, hey, we want to run Linux workloads, we want to be able to answer with a smile and say, yeah, of course. You can do it, and we'd love you to do it on top of our virtualization platform, because we believe it's top-notch, and it will run both Windows and Linux workloads. On top of that, we have projects like CoApp. If you have a project that is designed to run on Linux, you should check Co-op out, because it's a tool that will allow you to build optimize Windows binaries and package them and distribute them. So it's about reducing the friction for you to bring stuff to Linux. So from Linux to Windows. But it goes way deep into the operating system. And I'm very proud of the contributions that we are making, and we are making them the way they are supposed to be. And the Linux community is giving us credit for that, and that's fantastic. It goes beyond that. Recently, you may have heard of the announcement that we did on Hadoop. Again, customers are telling us big data matters. And we actually happen to love Hadoop. And this is where we answer, yes, sir, we're going to do that for you. And we announced a strategic partnership with Hortonworks a few months ago. And the idea is that Hadoop, you will be able to run Hadoop on both Windows Server and Windows Azure. So Hadoop as a service. And not only that, Hadoop as a service fully integrated with our BI, business intelligence tools. So we built connectors to Hive from Excel and from our business intelligence tools. And that alone has been welcomed not only by the industry, but also by the community. Because again, the moment we said, well, we will need to make some changes to the Hadoop code base to make it sing on Windows, we decided that we would contribute the changes right away and right back into the project. And this is what's happening now. If you go to the Hadoop project Jira, you will find that there is a big submission by Microsoft that has been discussed and parts have been integrated, et cetera, but that's the spirit. It's not just taking the technology, it's also taking the community aspect and working with the community to make it happen. And then we have the languages platform, because customers are telling us it's a polyglot programming world. There are no Java shop or .NET shop or PHP shops anymore. We use whatever tools are getting the job done. And it's usually a mix. So we saw growing interest for PHP. And now we are getting to a point where we can safely say that PHP is performant on Windows Server, on Windows Azure. We have SDKs for Windows Azure. We are working with the main and the top applications in the PHP world to make sure that they run extremely and exceedingly well. We have dedicated stuff, and again, they work with the PHP community. They provide testing resources to the PHP community. We have labs. We are running the latest builds, and we want to make sure that PHP is always a great experience on the Windows platform, not just Linux and Windows. And again, that applies to Java as well. So to us, we are seeing a lot of interest and uptake when it comes especially to Azure. People willing to run Java workloads. Here we have a quote from Gigaspaces, but we have more. We recently announced big customer wins, and that's because when it comes to the cloud, we believe we have a very solid story with Azure. And when it comes to Java, we are getting to a very performant platform that can be very interesting for developers and customers and people that have to deal with managing the systems on a day-to-day basis. And beyond that, Firefox. Yes, we are supporting Firefox. And we are supporting it both ways. We want to make sure that if you choose to use Firefox, you can still use our web apps, Windows Live, Office 365, Bing, Skype, MSN, you name it. They are all being built with cross-browser compatibility in mind. And one of the most downloaded projects on our properties is the Firefox plugin for Windows Media Player that allows you to play video on top of Firefox. And again, that's a contribution that we did to the browser. And yeah, again, we got some recognition and some kudos from the Mozilla community itself. And this is, again, what matters. Remember, open source, open standards, open development, open API, A mix of that is what constitutes the openness sauce in every place. But it's never just one. So, you see, we can go on all day. But it's really about not just what we do, but also how we are doing it. Again, with Drupal, we are working with the community to improve interoperability, to enable Drupal to run on top of SQL Azure. And guess what? We are making customers happy. The Screen Actor Guild is a perfect example of why the cloud is so important. These guys run a website that has a reasonable amount of traffic all year long, but then they run the Screen Actor Guild Awards, the SAG Awards, at the end of January, and that day, the traffic has an immense spike, right? And so they need and want a cloud platform, and they are running on Drupal, and they found Azure to be a great environment for them. And this January, everything went smooth, and it was great to see that happen. NoJS, that's another great story, I believe, because we saw it coming, we saw the interest. This is when, in a way, we didn't even wait for our customers to tell us what to do. But we saw that it was important and impressive. And we said, well, you know what? We want to be able to get on board. And if you think about it, when you think of the Microsoft you may expect, let's not forget that NoJS is a tiny wrapper on top of Google's JavaScript engine. So you may expect some resistance from a company like Microsoft to embrace that. Well, guess what? No, it's not the case. Today, one of the very few people that are being bestowed with committership in the Node.js core sits 2 doors from my office and is a Microsoft person. And the Windows port is not even a port anymore. Node.js is a multi-platform thing that runs on Windows and runs on Linux. And it will allow you to integrate your workloads, especially when it comes to Azure. Again, to us, it's a cloud story. And we have SDKs, and we are building a lot of stuff on top of Node because we are seeing developers being so excited, and for a reason. Come on, it's cool. It's extremely cool. And of course, on top of that, try it again. Oh, yeah. Sorry, there was a transition I wasn't prepared for. Let's go to Samba. Another surprising bit. The file system that mimics the Windows protocol, et cetera, we are contributing to it. We started something didn't work, and yeah, a Microsoft employee submitted a patch to improve interoperability. Yeah, and it's GPL code. Okay, so is the Linux kernel. It's not a big deal. We are doing that kind of stuff. We're doing it today, and we are soon getting to the point where it's really hard for me to keep it packed into the presentation because there's so much of it. And then, of course, we get to Solr, right? We announced it back in December, and we announced that we did some specific work to enable Solr on Azure. It's fully documented. Just go on the Solr wiki, and you will see how to deploy your scalable Solr services on Azure. And since then, we have been working and talking with Lucene Imagination, which is a great partner. I couldn't think of a better interface to have a business discussion about Lucene and Solr. And we are working hard to make the experience even better. So it's an ongoing investment. What you saw in December is something that allows you to hit the ground running, build a clustered Solr server, kind of textbook one, and it works just fine. And it allows you to scale today on Azure. Go and try it out. And we would love to hear your opinion on that. But know that, again, to us, this is important. It maps indeed with the big data story. And we know how relevant it is, not just to the word that may be a non-Microsoft word that we want to bring to Windows Azure, but also to the .NET folks. A lot of them are using Solr today, and they are asking us to support it. So again, to us, it's a no-brainer. So you heard me talk a lot about the cloud. This is the last bit. And this is where I want to tell you why we really believe that the cloud is changing a lot of things and how our business is evolving when it comes to the cloud per se. I think that Microsoft, well, what's going on? So I think that Microsoft has a very strong story when it comes to the cloud. You may not think of Microsoft as a cloud company, but guess what? We are. MSN, Bing, Windows Update. When I saw the traffic statistic of Windows Update, they blew my mind. So we already have that. It's not like we woke and we said, okay, we're going to be a cloud provider overnight. We already were and are. And our data centers are truly state-of-the-art. And we think that we have an application platform that is top-notch with some very interesting bits. And the investment is massive. When we said we are all in the cloud, we really mean it. That's how our business is going to be run. And this is where we want to be. And we have been there. And if you think about the leading provider in the cloud, they are all providing compute, storage, et cetera, but they are coming from an existing pedigree of doing services themselves. Well, we are definitely in that league. We are used to do that, and we know how to do that. And we built it in a way that really hinges on what we believe is openness in the cloud. We have a platform, and we are exposing that platform exclusively using open layers. You can interact with everything in Azure using HTTP, using XML, using AtomPop, using REST, using OData, web services, you name it. Every single functionality in Azure is exposed through an open layer. Yes, we have libraries, so you can use the language you want. And we are giving you libraries so that you don't have to do a lot of marshalling and unmarshalling. But if you want, the web services layer is for you to use. So it has nothing to do with being specific to a single language, to a single platform. It is as inclusive as it can possibly be, but at the same time, it's got some unique features such as a great database, extremely flexible compute, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want to pitch Windows Azure per se. I just want to tell you that we really believe that Windows Azure is an open story. And it's one of the many places we are working to build the next generation of Microsoft. And this is one of the many places where we can really say that, yes, we have changed. And again, it goes all over the place, be it at the client, on the devices, in the cloud, in the languages, in the databases. We are working with the community. We are working with open standards. We are doing lots and lots of open source. We have changed as a company. We have become more open. And it's great to be there. And it's great to be here talking to developers, talking to people who love and cherish open source. And that's what makes me think that I have a great gig, and I would love to hear from you. Tell us how we are doing. Tell us how we can do even better than this, and help us in this journey. Thank you. Oops. So the question is whether there is any difference in performance between Windows and Linux when running Solr and Lucene. Is that right? Correct. Yeah. Okay. So I am not aware of any specific performance difference. At the same time, our work has been focused on delivering Solr on Azure, right, which adds to the stack, so to speak. So the point is not just how performant can a single node be when it comes to Windows versus Linux, but how do you actually scale in a cloud? So how is inter-node communication happening, et cetera, et cetera. But to answer your specific question, I am not aware of any performance impairment on either side. I don't know, probably you have more benchmark than I do, but I understand that you have a good customer base on Windows as well.
Yeah, we absolutely do. We have a large number of our customers will deploy on Windows. And as far as I know, we haven't seen any or gotten any negative feedback in terms of performance characteristics on one platform versus another. But part of what we're going to start to do in the engineering team is two things in terms of transparency. One is we are going to start to run benchmarks in different configurations in order to provide that to our customers, both from an open source and a commercial perspective. And we also are going to start publishing the roadmap so we can get feedback, and that's a roadmap across the board. So everything that, at least is our vision from an open source perspective, all the way through the commercial technologies as well, so people can start to have an idea of where we're going and what we're doing. So hopefully that information will become more transparent, more visible over time. Yes, sir? So the question is, should we see more commitment on Lucene.net? It's really up to whatever the committers are up to. We're looking at working with Microsoft in terms of porting the commercial product and allowing that to be fully scalable and transparent in terms of performance on the Azure platform. And so and again, our foundation, our core is Apache Lucene Solr.
So the question is how this all maps to SharePoint, so to speak. So SharePoint is part of the Office family and of the Office adoption of standards. So SharePoint has been involved in CMIS, so how do you access document, of course, data. And so SharePoint aims to be an open platform where you can build a connector, fetch documents, and grab them. At the same time, of course, we are very proud of the internal search of SharePoint. Yeah. So I don't want by any means suggest that for the SharePoint case, you need anything more than SharePoint. At the same time, if you want to integrate into your wider base, yes, it does have what we call an interop surface that allows you to get data in and out. Thank you.